Hey everyone, this is Fever chapters 21 through 23 questions. Now, with our first question here, identify one moment in chapter 21 where Maddie shows she is caring for Nell. What does this suggest about the theme of family responsibility? And just remembering that a theme is something we keep coming back to in the story. So why do we keep coming back to the themes of family, the themes of responsibility? And I found this quote here where she's taking care of Nell on page 78, chapter 22. There's also this moment, I kept looking for it and looking for it, and maybe somebody can find it somewhere. I don't know if it's towards the end of 21 or 22 or wherever it might be, where she has to wash, Nell wakes up wet and Maddie has to take out her things, and I think that's a really good one too. I couldn't find that quote. Okay, but now chapter 21, chapter 22. How does Maddie's discovery of Nell in the doorway act as an initiating event for this specific section of the story? So think about an initiating event. What does it do? Because of Nell, what new conflict does Maddie face? Also, this is in chapter 20. I don't know why she says 20. Well, she doesn't really say, but it's in 20. But just think about the conflict that is created from having this new person introduced. Towards the end of chapter 20, I don't remember the exact page number. I think it's right at the very end, the last page of chapter 20. Describe Maddie's role as the protagonist in chapter 22. What is her primary goal when she finds Eliza? So here is a decent quote that I found that shows her goal, but it's not the only thing, okay? What you need to just be thinking about is, and it is in chapter 22, they go to the orphan house, and what is she trying to do as they go into the orphan house? What does she do as they go to the orphan house? Who makes that decision? What decision is made once they get to the orphan house? And even this kind of sets up how she's going to act later on as well. How is she going to be at Eliza's? Okay. If you have questions about this one, let me know. This is in chapter 22. I don't remember the page number. I'm sorry. All right. In chapter 20, I don't know why I didn't type the right number there. I think this is chapter. Oh, yeah. This is chapter 20 for sure. So this is page 70 of chapter 20. And then page 71 of chapter 21. But really page 70. So this is when she first finds Nell, basically, and just the conversation that she has with her. And I found a big one right here in chapter 20. Okay, this is all from chapter 20, page 70. Now, there is another interaction on page 71 in chapter 21, which is what this says. But there's no dialogue because she's not really talking. And then there's also moments a little throughout where Maddie kind of thinks about what she should do or thinks about how she should take care of things, but it's never as clear as right here when they are actually having a conversation. Okay? Right here when they're having that conversation. And just what is it would the Maddie in chapter 1 be willing to do what she does here? Why has she changed? What about her has changed? And what about Nell's situation it causes Maddie to act the way that she does? So that's what you kind of want to be thinking about with the dialogue. All right, what word does the author use to describe the Free African Society in chapter 23? Now, this is only mentioned in this section, 21 through 23, in chapter 22. It is also at the beginning of chapter 24. Now, I would just pause this and just look through this if you don't want to go find it yourself. But it's the only time the Free African Society is described. And what type of tone does it take? Do we have a tone of respect towards them? Do we have a tone of fear towards them? Do we have a tone of sadness? So you need something from the quotes that I've provided for you on this page here. And then to end at this page here, this is the quote from chapter 24. You need something like that, and then you need to choose one of the tone words: respect, fear, or sadness. That's all. What does that sentence or sentences or paragraph that you chose, which tone word does it applies to it? Okay, moving on to this question. Since the story is told in the first person, how does Maddie's perspective of the dead wagons affect how you feel about the setting? So yes, this is in chapter 20 again. She's killing me. It's just chapter 20 again right here. You'll see too. Page 67. This is right after grandfather has died, and they're just coming through taking dead bodies and just throwing them into the wagons. And so she has a reaction here. Okay. And just think about it, right? We are seeing her reaction to her loved one getting thrown into a cart. How would you react if that was one of your loved ones, or somebody that you knew, or somebody that you cared about, as opposed to somebody that you didn't, or somebody that you didn't care about or didn't know, right? If I'm just telling this story from my perspective, like I'm the narrator and I'm just saying, oh yeah, so as they went through the streets, they were picking up the dead and putting them in carts, you would be upset. I mean, I'm upset by something like that because it's very sad and it's gross, and there's a lot of things that we can be like, oh yeah, but then we move on. Whereas here, like, oh my gosh, like what her feelings were meant to feel or were meant to see, and so it makes that connection that it wouldn't have made, right? Otherwise, I hope that we're starting to see this with first person point of view. Okay, how does the hot, stagnant era of Philadelphia in chapter 21 influence? It's been hot the whole time, guys. Just talk about how it's been hot the whole time and what does it do. I did find 2 quotes that really kind of focused on the stagnant, meaning things aren't moving, right? That's a word we learned earlier, I hope. But page 68, 69 in chapter 20, again, but you can find it throughout if you want. It is in chapter 21. She's carrying a girl through the city, chasing after Eliza, and it's hot and she's heavy and she looks like she's about ready to pass out from the heat and the exhaustion. So how does historical novels approach the topic of orphanhood differ from the way in a modern news article might report on it? Just think about how we report on the news today versus how they talk about it here. But this is how they approached an orphanage, right? No one wants to go there, and then when you finally do go there, you're turned away. Okay, so how would that be reported today versus back then? If that's what would have happened, how would we be looking at it? Okay, and then here we go. You already know, right? You already know this regular language is nowhere to be found. However, what is it? Right? Is it a simile or a metaphor? Maddie describes the fever as a beast. And then think about the connotation. Is it positive or negative? A beast. And when you think about this, when you think about positive or negative connotation, right? If you had to choose, like our would you rathers or this or that, would you rather be called a cockroach or a puppy? Would you rather be called a beast or I'm trying to think of something that's not beastly. Anyways, you get the idea, okay? Now, looking at our questions, I don't think this shows up at all. I would just X this question out. Not that anyone was going to jump on this one, but I didn't see anything about this. Okay. Maybe it shows up more in chapter 24, but really here, it's really thin. Okay. She is sacrificing herself by, taking care of all of these people, but it's not enough. It's very thin for me. Okay. This one, the Rising Ashton Maddie searching for Eliza, it's in chapter 1. I think it's one of the easier ones, to be honest with you. Argue whether Maddie is a dynamic character based on her interactions with Nell. Maddie finding Nell in chapter 20, her attempting to take her to the orphanage in 22. And then think about how she's different, like dynamic, right? Is she the same girl from the beginning of the book? Or has she shifted, right? What were her motivations at the beginning of the book? What are her motivations now? That's what this is asking. I like this question a lot. I think you should answer it. But again, just stay away from this one right here. We're doing the short, choppy question again, so it's very similar to the one that you did it last time. Okay, chapter 21 specifically, because she's running through the city. Right? Think about how you would be if you were running through the city carrying a child. You'd be exhausted. Imagery is trickier. Imagery is always hard. I love when you guys do it, but compare the imagery of the coffee house in the beginning to Eliza's small apartment. So just make sure you find imagery from both an earlier chapter and chapters 22, something from chapters 22 to 23. And you see what I'm saying? It's just. It's not that I don't want you to do this one. It's just I'm telling you it's a lot more challenging, and it's not as easy as some of the other ones, but go for it. We keep talking about first person, so I really love it if you want to do something like this, because we've been focusing on the limiting nature of first person. So if you want to look at this question right here, this is in chapter 22 with the miserable setting of the orphanage interacts with Maddie's internal conflict. What is her internal conflict, right? Think about what her internal conflict is when it comes to the orphanage, when it comes to Nell. And how is that resolved when she actually goes to the orphanage? The theme of survival in the wilderness. I like this question a lot. I like the imagery one, but it's very tricky because you're comparing earlier chapters to these chapters. But how do these two wildernesses compare to one another? Because they're not the same in the sense of one's in a city and one's in the actual wilderness, but they are the same in the way that you have to navigate them, right? And then personification. This is not in chapter 23, but think about the personification, and then you may use it to help you write out your RTQTs. Remember, 2 RTQTs. And then with the vocabulary, some of you have been asking, can we Google these answers? I'd rather you not. I only want 1-word answers here. And I just want you to try your best to answer them. Okay? Just do your best to answer these questions. As always, guys, I'm sorry for the length of the video, but I was going through a lot of questions here. Thank you guys for watching. And if you have any questions, please let me know. All right. Bye, everybody.